Sometimes you look around my shop and go, what a mess. But when you're looking for something, it's nice to have stuff, right? This here Allison transmission out of a Duramax uses the same thread and length of a bolt here on this tail shaft housing as I need for bell housing bolts. And I think I didn't mention this last night, but I don't know where any of the hardware to put this thing back together is. So looking around, it's been a little while since I've had this apart. I managed to find torque converter bolts right there from a Duramax, but they fit my torque converter, and I only need 3 of them, so that'll work. And I found those are my bolts for my bell housing that I'm going to be using. And somewhere else on this pile, right there, I found some cross member bolts for the transmission. So I'm like most of the way there. The transfer case has studs sticking out the front of it. And so I need to find the nuts for that. And maybe a few odds and ends. But for now, I'm ready to get this transmission up in the truck. It is important to note, there are 2 dowels to locate the transmission that are in the engine. Okay? There was 1 dowel here still stuck in this transmission. So I just knocked that out because I have been known, if you believe it or not, to try to install a transmission on an engine where those dowels aren't allowing it to come together. And believe me, it's surprising how long you can get frustrated and stumped before you realize, oh, there's something interfering, you know, and that's kind of why it won't go together. I must say, it's very nice having really long extensions. And I can get that ratchet far behind the transmission itself and actually get to the top of the bell housing bolts fairly easy. Speaking of bolts, I don't even know where the starter is. It's also handy having an arrangement of small tools and adapters so you can get into tight spaces. So now the transfer case is in. What I ended up doing is, because I couldn't find any nuts for these studs, I loosened them up and then I ran them into the transfer case like 10 turns just by hand. And then robbed a few more bolts from that Allison transmission and used the studs just as pilots to get this in place, and then started those bolts and got it snugged up tight, and then replaced all the rest of the studs that were sitting in there. So time to put this cross member in and hook everything else up.